You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening, and a little bit of judicial policy, because we have as our guest Joy Cunningham. I should say Justice Joy Cunningham. She was a trial judge for 6 years. She's been an appellate judge for 4 years. Did I get that right?
You got that backwards.
4 years as a trial judge, 6 years an appellate?
That's right.
Joy, if I ever say anything wrong during this show, I will defer, because I have a sitting appellate justice to my right, and you should defer to the justices, because I call you, we say Your Honor, right?
That's right.
Okay. And more than that, more than being a sitting appellate justice and being a trial judge for a total of 10 years, she is running for the Illinois State Supreme Court, and she is a candidate in the Democratic primary. There are 4 candidates. We're taping this show on March 4th, which means there are 16 days left to the election, which is March 20th. That is a Democratic primary. There are 4 candidates, but people think there are mostly 3 major candidates. With all due respect to, is it Tom Flanagan?
Yes.
Who's the only guy in the race, but there are 3 women, and almost everybody would say one of those 3 women will certainly win the Democratic primary and have an excellent chance, if not be a shoo-in, to win the general election, because the Republican Party has major problems in Cook County. So the main thing is, we want to give you a sense of who Joy Cunningham is. More about Joy as we get into the show, but Joy, we're going to do something we haven't done before, so we're going to try this out, and you're good.
Okay.
We're going to try to give people a sense of who you are by doing this word association game. I'm going to show you a book, hold up a book, and our viewers, and you're going to give me the first thing, word or 2. You get 2 words, not much more, that comes to mind. We'll come back and talk about some of this more detail as the show goes on.
Okay.
Some of it we won't. So let's start out with one of our favorites, Free to Choose. That is by Milton Friedman, Free to Choose, a personal statement. I should say, I always say Milton, but of course it is Milton and Rose Friedman, his wife. What comes to your mind, Free to Choose?
Freedom.
There you go. She passed. School choice. What comes to your mind? This is by Herb Wahlberg.
Independence.
Independence. Okay. Let me ask one. School choice. Good or bad?
Good.
You think the idea of school choice is a good thing?
Good. Yes.
Charter schools, good thing?
I think having choices is a good thing.
And charter schools are a choice.
Having choices in general is a good thing, whether it be schools or food or going to church or anything else. So choices is a good thing.
All right. And charter school vouchers, school choice?
Choices in general is a good thing.
All right. A little longer than we thought on that. Let me try this one out here. This would be Dreams from My Father. You've heard of that, a story of race and inheritance by now President Barack Obama. Good shot of that.
I have the book.
You do. You know, Barack, I just got a little detour. Barack was sitting in that chair right where you're sitting on July 18th. You can almost see this, July 18th, 2004.
I see that.
And the autograph says, "To Jeff, I always enjoy our time together and hope our debates continue long into the future. Warm regards."
Barack Obama.
There you go. We haven't showed that. Maybe you can get a close-up on that. That's hard to get that
Gotta
cursive
move your
writing.
finger, though, so they can see the president's signature.
Joy is always straightening me out, and she's tough as nails, but I told her, be honest, right? All right, so there you go. Barack Obama was right there in 2004. Let me ask you, you know Barack?
I do.
What would you say? Is he a politician or is he a public policy guy?
Both.
Okay. And you knew he was teaching at the University of Chicago Law School while he was in the state Senate.
I do.
Right? And while he was practicing law, he had 3 primary things he was doing. What's the essence of Barack Obama?
Smart.
Okay. What's the essence of Joy Cunningham?
Capable.
All right. I think we're making some progress here. Clarence Thomas. This is my grandfather's son. That's what he was. My grandfather's son, a memoir. Clarence Thomas. Get a shot of that. Joy, what comes to mind when you see the phrase in the name Clarence Thomas?
Paradox.
What's the paradox?
That's what comes to my mind. You didn't ask me to
I
say
know,
why,
but
but
I'm
that's
probing
what
a little
comes.
bit.
Paradox.
Okay. You don't want to go further. Here we go. The Affluent Society. It's a little different from some of the other books. John Kenneth Galbraith, I think written, I don't know, probably circa 1960. So, written a while ago. John Kenneth Galbraith, The Affluent Society, what comes to mind?
Historical.
Was America an affluent society in 1960?
Maybe at some point.
Is it still?
In some quarters.
Is it good? that it's an affluent society?
In some quarters, yes. I think affluence is good.
If you could, would you make everybody in the United States affluent?
Of course.
You don't do any of this class envy that people talk about in politics, which go
Absolutely.
after the rich people, want to tax them, overtax them.
No,
We should reward rich people because they've been productive, right?
Well, now you're goading me. So,
think?
Jeff, I'm not taking the bait, Jeff. I'm not. I think
Should
that
we reward? Should we at
I
least,
think
should we
people
applaud people if they worked hard
I
and earned
think
money?
people should be rewarded for their hard work and efforts.
Okay, and rewarded by monetary as well as
Rewarded by whatever means they seek when they extend or expend the effort and the hard work. Some people are seeking one thing, some people are seeking another, but I think hard work should be rewarded.
Richard A. Posner. You know who that is?
I do.
Who is he?
He's a judge on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals here in Chicago.
Okay, and he's written a book called A Failure of Capitalism. That's kind of an odd thing for him to write about, you think?
Well, no, Judge Posner is a scholar, and he does write about things that are not specifically related to the law, but if you read that book, and I haven't read it, but I'm somewhat familiar with the contents, it is indirectly related to the judicial system, the law, and our society. So I can see how he would write that.
How was it, you say it was indirectly related?
I haven't read the book. This is just what I've heard.
What's your sense when you think it's indirectly related? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that if capitalism fails as we philosophically envision it to be, it has consequences, certainly for the judicial system, for the criminal justice system. So there are indirect consequences to the failure of capitalism.
Did it fail in 2008? In your view, forget what Judge Posner thinks, or Justice Posner, I guess Judge Posner. Mm-hmm. Forget what Judge Posner thinks. In your view, did capitalism fail in 2008?
I think the fact that we certainly had serious economic problems does not herald the failure of capitalism as a whole. No, I don't think it failed in 2008.
It didn't. It succeeded. It remains. Would you say capitalism in America remains vital and
Absolutely.
Successful? You believe in capitalism?
I'm an American.
Does that mean you believe in capitalism?
I believe in our American values.
Is capitalism an American value?
I think for some it is, absolutely.
So
and that's the beauty of America. Some people hold capitalism as a value and others do not.
We've mentioned Milton Friedman before. You know the name Milton Friedman,
I
right?
do.
You know the book called Capitalism and Freedom?
I'm not familiar with that particular book, but he's written more than one, so.
You're not. Have you read any of his?
No.
Here you go. I give you this.
Well, thank you.
We don't usually give guests.
Thank
I think
you
it's
very
permitted.
much.
Is that below the amount you can give something to a judge?
Well, how much did this cost?
Nothing. It was given to me as a gift.
Well, there you go. I can
Okay.
accept it. Thank you.
And you will take a look at that and read at least some of that prior to March 20th?
I absolutely will.
Okay, but he's an interesting guy. He's a Nobel.
Oh, he is.
He was a Nobel Prize laureate in economics.
He's renowned. He's an icon in his field, certainly.
And for Chicago, because he made his name
At the University of Chicago,
We
yes.
taught for probably about 2 decades.
And they have quite a reputation in economics at that school. So, yes, and he was part of that cadre.
Well, we'll come back, but here, this isn't a book, but this is a picture of Maggie Daley. I guess her full name was Margaret Corbett Daley. This is something they handed out at her funeral. We can get a shot at that. What comes to mind when you hear the name Maggie Daley?
Elegant.
Elegant, okay. Was she good for Chicago?
Absolutely.
Okay. Will Chicago miss her?
Absolutely. I miss her.
She was a Democrat, right?
She transcended that.
She
really
transcended
did.
politics?
She transcended being a Democrat or a Republican. She was just the first lady of Chicago in every sense.
Now, you're a Democrat.
I am.
Okay. You're somebody who was a nurse.
I was.
You worked for Planned Parenthood.
I didn't. I
You
didn't
didn't ever work for
I
Planned
didn't
Parenthood?
work for them, no.
Did you ever work with Planned Parenthood?
Yes.
Did you enjoy working with Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, sure I did. I volunteer. I was a volunteer there.
Are they an important part of American society, Planned Parenthood?
Well, in what sense?
Well, in the sense that some would say they're important in providing health care for women or enhancing the ability of women to get full health care services. Would you agree with that? Did I state that right?
Well, I don't know what their mission statement is because it was many years ago that I worked for them, but I think all organizations that provide health care or basic services for people, whether it's women or children or men, I think those are organizations that help to make us the society that we are. Before I came in here, while I was waiting for you, I was watching a piece on CNN about a section of Nairobi, Kenya, and it had to do with healthcare and the lack of organizations providing healthcare in this particular slum. And so, in my view, any organization that's providing healthcare to the masses is a good thing.
Okay. But what is the organization that's known for breast cancer? I can't remember the name.
There are a number of them. There's
Coleman
one called Why Me. There's one called, there's certainly the Lynn Sage Foundation. There's the Susan G. Komen Foundation.
Susan G. Komen, and that was kind of in the
others.
news because it turns out what came up in the is that some of their money, some of the funding that goes to the Susan Komen Foundation, which people thought was to focus on breast cancer, goes in turn to Planned Parenthood.
Oh,
Is that
really?
right?
I don't know. I have no knowledge
And there
of
was that controversy because some of that does go to Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood, at least for a while, some would say they were and are under investigation.
Oh, really?
I think, what's that guy's name? Mr. Lisnick, we show his show, does politics today. He was corrected by somebody who's somewhat to the left, and so he adopted that correction. He said, oh no, they're not under investigation, they're under inquiry. I think that was right, and I was wondering, have you ever heard anybody say somebody's under inquiry?
No, I have no knowledge of any of this.
Correct. But anyway, so they had that, and then because they were under investigation, then apparently the Coleman Foundation withdrew and said they would no longer give money to Planned Parenthood. Many people who were supporters of Planned Parenthood objected, and then I think Coleman Foundation reversed there. But the whole thing that highlights is the sensitivity of the issue still, perhaps, of the issue of privacy, right? If we go back just a little bit, because we'll get to this in a minute, but privacy, there was a decision by the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, I think called Griswold, remember that?
Yes,
Because you went to law school.
I did.
Where'd you go to law school?
I went to John Marshall.
You went there during the day.
I did.
While you were a nurse.
That's right.
You were nursing, you were being a professional nurse, a
I
registered nurse
I was
at
a
night,
critical care nurse, that's right.
and you were doing law school.
I was doing law school.
And so
in
you
daytime.
studied constitutional law, which
I
you
did.
at John Marshall.
I certainly did.
And what did Griswold hold? What was that case about?
Well, I think Griswold certainly defines the right to privacy, essentially individual right to privacy. And I think the Supreme Court essentially put their stamp of approval, or made it what the public had already believed and what people were already practicing now became the law of the land after Griswold.
So this document they were looking at, this is the Constitution of the United
Yes.
States. You're familiar with this document?
I am.
Now, do you carry it? I was taught,
Well, I don't
leave home without it.
I don't
so you
carry a
always carry it
copy
in
with
pocket.
me,
You
Jeff.
don't carry a
No, I
pocket
don't.
copy? Do you think you should, perhaps?
Probably not. I have enough things in my purse already. I'm not sure if another item can fit.
But, so in Griswold, the U.S. Supreme Court said that there is a right to privacy. Did they say that, and that right to privacy is contained in here, in the U.S. Constitution?
Well, they found that the right to privacy was contained in the I think they used the word the penumbra, which means just it's not specifically in a particular place, but taken as a whole and read in its entirety, the Constitution certainly suggests, or should I say, gives the right to individuals to have privacy in their own homes and about their persons and so on.
Okay, so is that now settled doctrine, would you say?
Yes, it's settled.
Griswold
It's
settled.
settled law.
Is Roe v. Wade settled doctrine?
Yes, it is.
Is Webster settled doctrine? Is that another of the Roe v. Wade progeny, another application of the court relating to abortion rights?
Well, if the Supreme Court has spoken and has taken a position, that is settled law in our country.
All right. So would you say that a woman has a right to choose based on the U.S. Constitution?
Well, I would say that the Supreme Court has spoken on that issue, and the Supreme Court's ruling is still the law of the land. And so if the Supreme Court has spoken, it's the law of the land.
But people, You have said this. You have said that many cases, most cases that come before the Illinois Supreme Court, there'll be settled doctrine.
Before any court, actually.
Any court. Settled doctrine facts, and you just kind of apply one to the other, and it's relatively easy, right?
Well, no case is relatively easy.
Relative to the ones that, what are the harder ones? What are the
I
harder
wouldn't
ones?
say that. I
Okay.
would say that the outcome of the case is often determined by the facts as settled law is applied to those facts. But it's not always easy to determine what aspect of a particular set of facts should be, what aspect of a particular area of settled law would be applicable to what part of the facts of a case. So it's not easy, but if you do the analysis, I do believe, and that this is my belief, that the majority of cases, the outcome will be determined by the facts of that case and already settled law, which will then be applied to the facts of that case.
The U.S. Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade and its progeny said that a woman has a right to choose in terms of whether she'll have an abortion or not, and the government can't regulate. I think that's what it says. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you may
It's
know
been a
this better.
while since I read Roe
Me
v. Wade,
too.
and I didn't bone up on it before
No,
I
let's
came
talk about it casually.
today.
I think it said, this is my memory, see if it serves, if you tend to agree at least with my memory, stating it right. The first trimester, the government can't really do much in terms of regulation of abortion. Woman has basically an unlimited right. And I think that continues into the second trimester, the first 6 months. But for the last trimester, there seems to be more room for the government, state governments, federal government, to legislate in that area and perhaps restrict a woman's right to have an abortion in that last trimester. Is that sort of what you understand Roe v. Wade and its progeny to be?
I think generally, but as I said, it has been many years since I read that decision. I had no idea that we were going to talk about it
I
today,
neither.
so I haven't read it.
Totally
but
unscripted show.
I think I will agree with you with the caveat that I could be wrong because it's been many years since I read the opinion.
All right. That's, do you think that's if that's settled law, if we stated it right, does that sound good to you?
When the Supreme Court has ruled, it doesn't matter if it sounds good to me. That's the law of the land.
No opinions whatsoever?
And I think it would be inappropriate and certainly improper for me to opine in a way that would suggest that I was trying to overturn the United States Supreme Court. So I think that the Supreme Court's ruling is the law of the land, whether we like it or not. And especially as a judge, I think that's one of the things that judges and judicial candidates really have to take to heart. The settled law is settled law, and our individual personal opinions really are neither here nor there.
But the Supreme Court does, from time to time, reverse itself.
Absolutely.
Reverse longstanding precedent.
Absolutely.
And then what is settled law becomes not so settled.
Right, but then it's replaced with something else that now becomes settled law. So, but until that happens, what their last ruling was, that's settled law.
But doesn't it the case that there may be a state law that's passed, and it may relate to abortion? Hypothetically speaking, let me just say, for instance, parental notice. That Illinois could pass a law, and perhaps has passed a law, that says that parents in Illinois have a right to notice before their minor daughter gets an abortion. Does that sound like a law that's passed in Illinois? That is a law that was passed by the Illinois legislature?
It may have been.
Yeah. And if they did that, then it may be that somebody would challenge that decision of the legislature in court.
Certainly,
file a
that's
lawsuit,
possible.
and perhaps the Illinois Supreme Court may have held in the past that that law was constitutional. That is, it was permissible under Roe v. Wade and the progeny to restrict a woman's right to choose a minor daughter, in the sense that a parent had to be notified by the doctor of the abortion of a minor daughter prior to the abortion, parental notice. And it could be challenged, and it could go all the way up through the courts, federal courts, perhaps state court might come before you. And you see, so nothing is totally settled in the sense that you may face, as you say. Does that sound familiar? Does that, the scenario that I've painted, did that happen in Illinois in the last 10 years?
Did what happen?
That the Illinois legislature passed a law that said that parental notice is the law of the land in Illinois, and a woman, minor woman, before she gets an abortion, the doctor has to notify the parents, not get their consent, but notify. It's called parental notice.
Yes.
And then it went to the Seventh Circuit, and I believe went to the Supreme Court, or it certainly went to the Illinois Supreme Court. It went somewhere, and my understanding is that's the law of the land, and it was left to the Supreme Court, I think, to issue some regulations how that was to be enforced. Does that sound familiar?
I don't believe that the Supreme Court issues regulations. It would probably be some
They
other...
would order the lower court to issue the regulations.
Yeah, some
Certain
other
courts of Cook
body
County.
would issue,
Okay.
Whoever is responsible for overseeing that, whether it's the Department of Health and Human Services.
Did they go ahead?
or
Did they go
something.
ahead and do that?
I
do you know?
don't. That
No.
I'm not
Okay.
familiar with.
All right. You know, another issue
Yes.
that this is interesting because I think it illustrates the law is not completely dry, black letter law. It relates to people's activities.
That's right, and it should.
And you think your activities, the fact that you were in-house counsel at Loyola,
Yes.
the fact that you were general counsel for Northwestern Memorial Hospital,
Yes.
the fact that you were in the private practice of law,
Yes.
the fact that you were at the Attorney General's office, right?
Yes.
All of that says that you have not just been a judge, not to denigrate being a judge, but that's a set of experiences, life experiences, that you would say it comes into play when you think about things that maybe come before you in the court, like abortion, like school choice, and so forth.
Absolutely. I think that, as you say, it's not dry and dead and settled. The law is really a dynamic process more than anything. And as a part of that, I think the sum total of the experiences of the judges who are hearing issues related to this dynamic process will certainly come into play. And if you've only been exposed to one type of situation, if you've spent your entire professional life, for example, as a judge, I think you will look at issues that come before the court with a different set of eyes than someone who may have practiced and actually tried cases or been in the business sector, been in the private practice of law in a law firm. I mean, I think that you really do look at things through a different prism depending on what the sum total of your experience is.
Now, one of your opponents in this election is Mary Jane Tice, right?
That's correct.
She currently sits on the Illinois Supreme Court.
She has an interim appointment.
But she sits on the court.
Yes.
And that is up through this election. If she wins this election, she will then sit for 10 more years. If you win this election, you'll sit for 10 more years.
Well, she is not the incumbent. She is a temporary appointee.
Okay. There is no incumbent.
There is no incumbent until the voters select that person.
Okay.
That person then becomes the incumbent. Whoever wins the general election will become the next Supreme Court justice.
Okay. And she was an appellate justice for roughly how many years?
I can't say,
years,
but it
I
was a
think?
long time.
17 years.
Sounds right.
She was a trial judge for about 10 years, right?
Sounds right.
You were a trial judge for?
4 years, so about 4 years.
Okay. She 10, you 4. On the appellate level,
6 years.
6 years for you, 17 for her,
Right.
plus 15 months as a state Supreme Court justice. Does she have you beat on the issue of experience, judicial
Well,
experience?
she has me. Well, it depends on what you call having me beat. I do not believe that being a judge for virtually your entire career makes you a better judge. Most people who come before the court are not judges. They come from a variety of walks of life.
But she knows this stuff cold. I mean, I watched that. People can watch the Chicago Tribune, right? The editorial board meeting. Where
Yes.
You were there.
Yes.
Aurelia Paczynski was there.
Yes.
Tom Flanagan
Yes.
was there. And Mary Jane Tice.
Yes.
And if you watch that editorial, you can find that at chicagotribune.com. Okay? She knows this stuff cold. She says whenever something had come up about the law or about a possible interpretation or a modification, she'd say, oh, I was on this committee, we're looking at that, we're looking at capital punishment, so forth. And you folks, it wasn't as if you or Tom or Ori didn't know anything, but she seemed to shine on that. Would you say?
Well, no, I would not say that at all. I think if that's the criteria, then the person who's handpicked as the interim appointee will always have the upper hand, because if you are handpicked and you are the interim appointee, then you are sitting on the Supreme Court. So you do have an opportunity to serve on these committees that other judges who are in the system and who may very well be just as capable, if not more so, are not privy to, because they're not sitting on the court. So if the point is that the person who's already who's appointed is the better person, in that case, we should just do away with the elective system and allow the retiring justice.
I said she seemed to shine. You would say you've got more of a blend of experience. You've got a blend of doing things outside being a judge with being a judge.
Well,
Lori Paczynski has a blend of being a Cook County clerk, so less judicial. So my point is there is a choice in this election between you, Mary Jane Tice, Tom Flanagan, and Lori Paczynski. This is not an election in which, as they said in 1964, or sometime they would say, they talk about an echo, not a choice. I mean, yeah, Goldwater was an echo, was a choice, not an echo, because Goldwater was quite different from LBJ. My point to you, I'm not saying who's best or not best. And I say shine, you could shine in other areas. So if you watch that session, I would say you excelled in some areas, Ori excelled in some areas, and Mary Jane excelled in some areas. True?
I think so.
People have got a choice.
That's true, and I think choices, as I said at the beginning of this
They're free to
broadcast,
choose.
I think choices are good.
Okay. That was the point.
I
Not
think
who is best.
choices are good.
They asked her about, Rahm Emanuel because he's endorsed her, right?
Yes, that's my
Would you
understanding.
like Rahm Emanuel's endorsement?
No, I wouldn't.
Tony Preckwinkle has endorsed you.
Well, she has.
She's Cook County Board President. Rahm is mayor. What's the difference? You've got Tony's endorsement. She's got Rahm's endorsement. Both powerful Democratic figures. Yeah, they're different in the sense of, different people, but there's nothing wrong with Tony endorsing you, right?
No, there's nothing wrong.
And there's nothing wrong with Rahm endorsing her, right?
Well, I think it depends on what that endorsement translates to.
What do you mean?
Just what I said.
Well, is it that Rahm is raising money from various law firms and he's more powerful and more able to do it from the law firms than, say, Tony is, and those law firms might be appearing before whoever becomes the state Supreme Court justice? Is that the point you're trying to make?
Well, no, I think it's traditional for candidates to be endorsed. I think endorsing a candidate is one thing. Active interference in a state Supreme Court election is another.
Are you saying Rahm is interfering?
I'm not saying that at all. I said I think endorsing a candidate.
Well, what are you saying? Let's be candid, be honest, because you got to be honest.
I'm being candid.
Okay, so active interference is one thing. What do you mean? Who is interfering and how are they interfering?
I think endorsements, as I said, I think endorsements are certainly a routine thing that happens in every election, and we welcome endorsements. Okay. I think that what the public is not used to is going beyond the endorsement and having active interference, as I said.
Well, we're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Appellate Justice Joy Cunningham. She is running in the Democratic primary on March 20th. She is running for election to the Illinois Supreme Court. It is an important decision that you, the voter, will be making. You are free to choose. You have 4 choices in that Democratic primary. In the general election, there will likely be a Republican candidate. You will be free to choose. And tell us, is Rahm Emanuel interfering? Is he going out to people and saying, look, if you want to do business with the city, you might want to support